pride and ownership, the love for the job. I'm your host, Chief Rick Lasky, and we're recording today's program on September 11th. We want to just mention a couple items before we move on. Is a lot of wonderful ceremonies and memorials going on today, as should be. We'd love to see more folks do it more, obviously, but some pretty incredible things to remember those that gave so much on the 11th. And not necessarily just in New York City, but at the Pentagon and in Pennsylvania as well. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the families of those that suffered so much, and to our brothers and sisters out there. We're there for you. You know that we're always there for you, thinking of you, and especially on this day, but throughout the year. And we're going to talk about never forgetting a little bit here. But we wanted to do today's program on September 11th for a reason, and I've got a very special guest. We've tried to schedule this before, and I was going to do it when he was here as our keynote speaker for Keeping Tradition Alive, our symposium here in Louisville. But Chief Siarnicki said, why don't we do this on September 11th? And actually, that's our guest, Chief Ron Siarnicki. He's the executive director of the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. Chief Siarnicki started with Prince George County Fire and EMS Department in 1978, and rose through the ranks to the rank of Chief of Department, and served as a volunteer before that. We're going to capture some exact years here in a second, but before I bring Ron on here, I just want to say, when you meet, there's so many people in the fire service that have impact, if you will, and that impact is because they're passionate about things. Over the years, we've seen, the folks, the Chief Ray Downey and the Alan Brunacinis and the John Normans and so many incredible leaders, that we've been able to run up against that have had an impact. Well, Brother Ron is one of those people. What he's doing for the fire service, if you're not feeling it now, which we're going to talk about that you are, years from now, we'll still be talking about this man, the impact he has had on the lives of every firefighter, and not just, I won't even say just in North America, because this carries overseas. The programs, what he's doing, the passion that he has when it comes to protecting firefighters, when it comes to their safety, their survival, health issues, everything that goes along with that is absolutely incredible. And he's a person, he's a man making a difference. I'm proud to call him my brother, and I want to welcome to the show, Ron. Welcome, brother.
Thanks a lot, Rick. And man, you give me some big shoes to fill there, my friend.
Buddy, you've been, and you know for a fact that everywhere I go, I brag on you, buddy. And I'm not trying to embarrass you. I do. Every program I teach, one point or another, I get to where what we're supposed to be doing. And it really comes down to whether you're teaching leadership or tactics and strategy, whether it's pride and ownership, no matter what it is. Everything we do in the fire service has to come back to keeping our folks alive and teaching our firefighters how to survive. And again, it's not always just on the fire ground, which as soon as we talk firefighter survival, I think it's just on the fire ground. It's more than that. And you are, buddy, I'm telling you, again, the impact you're having on the fire service, and we're going to talk about, I'm going to ask you about that frustration later, because I think you and I felt the same thing, that you've got so many incredible things going, and sometimes you still feel like, God, maybe it's not enough. What are we doing? You are, and we're going to be talking about you and this foundation for forever. It's going to be one of those things that. So I'm not trying to embarrass you, buddy. It is a fact, but that's what I love about you. You're a humble guy, very modest guy, and you're one of those great ones that doesn't take compliments well, and that just shows you what kind of great person you are. So again, welcome, buddy. And today's September 11th. Can I just pick your brain? What are your thoughts about just today, buddy?
Well, I'm out here in Maryland, so it's interesting. I just talked to some people across the country, and here in Maryland we're having a cloudy day, lots of rain, so it's one of those gloomy days anyway for us here on the East Coast. But what you said in the beginning is so critical. This day, September 11th, is one that the fire service will never forget. Absolutely. But what we need to do is reflect on what September 11th has done to the fire service. 343 of some of the finest firefighters in the world died that day. And what we have to do is reflect upon their courage and their valor that day and what that represents for the American Fire Service. Actually, to be honest, the International Fire Service, as you say.
Yeah.
But it's what we're all about, It's understanding that this is a dangerous business and that sometimes there are unpredictable events that will lead to a firefighter tragedy. But also what we have to do is we have to learn from this and really use it to some extent as a springboard. There are so many firefighter deaths that aren't from unpredictable events. And I think in memory of those fallen brothers at FDNY, we need to use that as that springboard to push to make this business as safe as we can. And for me personally, it's a day that I tend to not go to the ceremonies today, and probably people are wondering why. Well, there's a lot that happened with 9/11, but people may not know that the foundation actually was dispatched to New York on September 12th by then FEMA Director Joe Albo. And my staff and I lived in New York City for 12 weeks, and we helped the counseling services unit there try to begin the road to recovery for those families in that department. And so it's got a special place for me. There's memories of, the first time I went down to Ground Zero and the smell and the look of the place. Just things like that. And so for me, it becomes a day when, I just need to kind of internally reflect and think about it and remember. And it, to some extent, is some of the drive. None of us want to go through that again. None of us want to see that happen again.
Well, and I'm on the same lines. I've done the same thing where there's a lot of great memorials and things going on in the Metroplex here in Dallas-Fort Worth. But for me, I do the same thing, Ron. It's a time to think about friends and what went on and the impact that they had. But can I ask you to get a little bit further into the counseling that went on? We in the fire service, and you and I have talked about so many different things when it comes to this over the years, but, having lost friends myself in the past, earlier in my career, we solved our issues and our pain and suffering by going to Vaughn's Tap at 65th and Central and tipping a few and realizing later that that's probably the worst thing you can do. I never was a big believer in counseling. I never believed in it. I never thought it, I was against it. Until I lost a good friend, and I am a huge proponent of it now. It's a necessity, and before I ask you to comment a little bit further on it, Ronnie, I just, we've had some events here, and I've tried to remind some of our senior captains to say, I don't need it, that you're not doing it for you as much as you're doing it for those younger firefighters that need it, and they need to see you stand up and say, you know what, let's go through this, let's sit down, because it is the healthy thing to do. And again, I'm an example of a complete 360-degree turn. I'm believing it. It's incredible. How much of an impact do you truly believe? I mean, in dealing with 9/11 and what went on there, but that you have, and that the folks that do that with you and for you have on the lives of the families and some of the fellow firefighters when it comes to the counseling services.
And actually, that is an excellent piece. Just real quick, I want to make sure that I want to add one thing to what I was saying about my personal way that I think of 9/11. The ceremonies, the memorials, and the tributes are critical for the community and for the world to know what the fire service is about. And you're right. In your opening statement, you said there are some out there. It would be nice if there were more, and I agree with that 100%.
I couldn't help but not do that, buddy.
Absolutely. And what has to happen, though, is the piece you just said. There has to be an understanding of how every person deals with grief, traumatic loss, and the recovery process. And that's what's critical about this behavioral health component is that, everybody's a little bit different in how they deal with it. You are absolutely correct. In the early days, the way we dealt with it was we went out and tied one on. And that necessarily wasn't the best, but it was what we knew. That was a tradition out there. What we're finding out is that some of the activities that happened when you were out with your buddies are actually good. Not the alcohol part, unfortunately. And
right.
I partake in my share of the beverage just as much as anybody else with dinner and other days. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is that alcohol was somewhat of a tool then, not the best tool, nor is it what I'm recommending, but it helped guys open up. And that's really what behavioral health is about, is getting those deep emotions out onto the discussion floor. And the term that we use is the kitchen table.
Right.
How many times have you come back, or our listening audience come back from a call, and you end up going to the kitchen automatically, whether it's to get a cup of coffee or just to sit down, and sooner or later, the whole crew is in there. You kind of migrate there. And then all of a sudden, somebody opens the door and says, man, that was pretty crazy, that call, or that was, pretty rough. And there's going to be some firehouse jokes. That's part of our process. A little bit of humor helps us deal with the tragedies that we see. And that's the problem. We see the worst sometimes in our communities. The death and destruction that occurs often to the very young and the very old, the ones that can't help themselves. And what we have to do is learn how to, in fact, deal with that. And so that peer interaction is critical. And that's what I was referring back to, going down to the local tavern. It's that peer interaction. And what happens is that first level of discussion is how we see people being able to relieve some of that initial tension. But it can't stop there. And that's what's going on with the behavioral health components. And it ties right back to 9/11. When the National Fallen Firefighter Foundation went up there, we were asked to work with the counseling unit to help deal with the stresses that the firefighters had, that were on the POW, that were trying to, maintain staffing levels in the stations. The guys all wanted to go to dig, and they had to, run calls and all those other things. What we learned is that peers, firefighters, who had some basic skills were the best tool because, one, they were immediately accepted because they were firefighters. And two, they understood the language. There are some wonderful behavioral health professional counselors out there. But if you take a psychologist or psychiatrist and you drop them in a firehouse and they don't know the difference between an engine and a truck or a hose line or an axe, the guys turn it off. Because
they actually they almost become offended, don't they? Like, who are you to come and
try
to talk to me?
Yeah, they're polite enough that they don't tar and feather them.
Yeah.
But they just turn it off, and then what happens is they have a bad experience. And then when you really get a decent counselor available, that bad experience has not only impacted them, but everybody they've talked to about it. Telephone, telegraph, telefirefighter.
Right.
3 major communication mediums in the world, it's over. They're marked. And so what we're working with some of the leading psychological support groups out there, and some of the experts are from fire service organizations. Vicki Taylor out of Prince William County, Virginia, and Dr. Richard Geist out of Kansas City, Missouri, and the FDNY and other groups that if we could give the peers the basic tools to do the first piece, and we're really calling it psychological first aid. Go in, put a Band-Aid on it. It's what we've all learned in the early American Red Cross. Stop the bleeding, keep them breathing, and then get them to the next level, if and only if they need that.
Right.
Then there has to be a piece that the clinicians, which is the professionals, have had an exposure to the business, understand why we run into buildings when everybody else is running out, and can talk the language that we understand. And then you've got a tool that works. And then, guys say, you know what, he or she's not a firefighter, but at least they understand me. I feel comfortable in this environment. And that's what we teach our firefighters from the very beginning. If you're in a building or you're in a scenario, if you're in a situation and you don't feel comfortable, that's a sign that you need to get out. And we do that with essentials of firefighting. If the room's getting untenable, get out. And the same thing applies to that encounter on a human level. If you don't feel comfortable, you automatically turn off, and hey, you're out of here.
Well, and not to sound like Johnny Drama here, but counseling services have not only saved firefighters, some of these men and women, their careers, it saved some of their lives because, without having that shoulder to lean on, without having that ability, Ron, like you said, to open up that conduit, I'm sorry, and that's why I said I've turned around. You cannot keep that all inside. It's not healthy. And you've seen before some of the tragedies that come out of a tragedy because someone wasn't forward-thinking. Someone was a progressive like you and your staff and some of the other folks that are out there to do that. So they try to play the mantra, the tough thing, and they're actually hurting their folks sometimes. So these programs have actually saved lives. In fact, I know that for a fact. It's actually saved people's lives. That's the impact you're having with that.
Absolutely correct. And what it's done is it's helped them get the support they need before they get deeper into the bottle or control dangerous substances or become a disciplinary issue in a department, lose their families, lose their jobs, and sometimes lose their lives.
Well, and just years ago, I remember, when I turned around, for me was December 6th, 1989, was having that piece of paper that said to someone's spouse, expect this, expect to see this, expect to see, because we often forget about the folks home. You said before, where do we go? We go to kitchen table. We want to go back to the firehouse. That's normal and natural. And a lot of our significant others don't understand that because no one's ever explained that, and they take offense to it. And like you said, now we're creating those bad relationships out there family-wise when family is probably the most important thing you've got, especially at a time like that. But you hit it. We've talked about the kitchen table around so many times about some of the best experiences, some of the stuff I've had some of my best learning experiences at the kitchen table and opening up. But it's just
it's our comfort zone. It's the place that we joke, we laugh, we cry, we learn because it's the center. I think, and this is what I'm seeing. It is the center. It's the heart of the fire station.
And Ron, don't you, and back me up on this one if you believe it, and I'm already ahead of myself because I know you do, but we've all dealt with firefighters that have had situations where they've come back to the firehouses after bad calls, whether it was the death of a child or the third one that week, or, that have had problems sleeping. They've had frightmares. They've had situations, and they're scared to tell anybody because they think they're going to be viewed as being weak. And don't we want them to know that at times that is normal, that is a natural feeling? You said it before, we see people at our worst running up against people that are all broken and busted up and bleeding or burned up or things like that, or, dealing with kids is some of the hardest. There's a lot of people that can't do that. It takes someone very special to be a firefighter to be able to take care of folks at their worst and remain, solid with your emotions. But I mean, we want some of the young firefighters to know that it's normal to have some of those things, but again, don't not address them, but don't feel like there's something wrong with you if you're feeling bad.
Exactly, and unfortunately, part of our culture is that macho cowboy or cowgirl image that, we got to be tough, suck it up, move on. And the reality is we're human. And, inside our brains and inside our emotional components of our makeup, things are churning. And that's the piece that really is critical when you talk about leadership. You said it earlier about if the station officer or the crew team leader is strong enough and comfortable enough to say, this is okay, people in the fire service follow that lead. And that's what leadership's all about, getting people to understand what the right thing to do is and then getting them to go down that road. And so it's okay to feel like I can handle this, but the reality is there are significant outward signals that a firefighter, a human being, puts out when they're in distress. And it's oftentimes they start going into solitude. They're hanging away from the crew. They quiet down when they're around people. And what's interesting is, and I hear this all the time, the guys in the station know something's going on. You know how it is.
Right.
You live with these guys for 24 hours. They know what's going on in your personal life. They know what's going on in your business. They know all that because they're there with you every day. And what we're hoping, and what we're hoping to do is give the team, the crew, a little bit of training, that's that peer piece, some tools, so that if they recognize a problem, they then are empowered to do something about it, and won't feel like I made a bad mistake and I embarrassed somebody or I said something because I wasn't sure. And yeah, sometimes they're going to be wrong, but that's okay, because what they're showing is care for their brothers and sisters. And then from there, what has to be in place, though, is a way for that individual, that guy or gal that's having those issues, to do a self-assessment. And to do that, and what we're seeing is to do that privately. And what we just stumbled upon, there is a website called After Deployment that was developed by the VA for returning veterans. And it's an internet site that you can go in and deal with post-traumatic stress, loss of friends, traumatic death, and it just has a couple of steps to kind of self-evaluate you. And what we're seeing with the military is that the guys want to go in there. They're willing to do it, but they don't want to do it in front of an audience. You know, it's hard to go up to your captain and say, "Hey, Cap, look, you know, I'm having an emotional issue here." That's tough. But if they can get the signs identified, if they can do a self-assessment, and then at the end of that assessment, it provides some steps that they might want to take that have different levels of exposure for what they're suffering from. And then they could say, they may get the courage to go to their captain, or they may seek private help away from the job, but at least it gives them the tool to say, one, this is normal. This happens to a lot of people. You know, you're not, and I hate to use this word, but it's something that is in every firehouse. You know, you're not crazy. This is okay.
Right.
And it is fixable, and it is treatable. And this is the things that you can do to help. And that's what the fire service needs dramatically. And we're working to get there. As a matter of fact, we've met with the VA already about modifying that from military application to fire application. And I think that's something that's going to happen, I hope, fairly soon.
What an incredible site. I've never heard of that. I'm glad you mentioned it, because we have actually, you know, and you mentioned a little bit, how many firefighters and police officers out there that are serving in the military as well.
Absolutely.
And what a great site. And it goes back to one of the things I want to touch more time around, which you were talking about, is, you know, having the leadership. There, you know, you really would hope there would be more lieutenants and captains, battalion chiefs that would say, you know, all right, I'm fine. That bad call we just had at that house or whatever, we lost that family. You know, I'm okay with it, but it's not just about you. And I don't want to sound mean, but it's time not to be selfish. It truly is time to think about those young firefighters in your company, and those you know, those that are just, this is like maybe their first, or they're, you know, it's about them. And it means, you know what, here, let's sit down. This is a good thing, and you stay. I guess the positive attitude probably is the best way to get people to understand that counseling and dealing with it and talking about it's okay.
Absolutely. And there's another component to this research that we've been doing, and it's actually, you know, we would call it a critique in the fire world, but the technical term is called a hot wash. And I don't know if you've heard that, or if any of our listeners have heard that. But there has been a lot of work done, again in the military, about after you had a traumatic experience, whether it's a firefight in the military, a death of a comrade, you go back somewhere and you have what's called a hot wash. And it is, as I said, for us, the critique. And it talks not only about what happened in the incident, it talks about what things couldn't we control that led to the incident. Because oftentimes when there's a traumatic occurrence, we don't know all the facts, and oftentimes we as human beings then begin to attach blame, whether it's on someone else or on ourselves. Did I do everything? How many times have you heard firefighters question themselves, did I do everything?
Oh, yeah.
Joe didn't get out of the building? and then we tear ourselves apart going through that. So this hot wash theory is, you come back, and it doesn't need to be immediately, but it has to be within a time frame. And you go to the kitchen table or wherever you're going to go, and you talk about all the other pieces, because there may have been something that one of the guys saw on the rear of the building who could bring information to the crew who were on side one that had the tragedy that didn't know that's really what happened. And as you share these facts, it, one, opens the picture up of what really happened with the traumatic occurrence, and two, it gives the crew a chance to begin, it breaks that ice to start talking about, what's going on, because the other element of the hot wash is the behavioral health piece.
Right.
Guys, we saw some pretty bad stuff today. This is something that happens in our business, but it isn't something that has to stay within you. If you're having some issues, we can get the firefighter peers in. Here's a site that you can go to talk about, and it gives that team leader the opportunity to introduce those tools and to reinforce those tools to the crew right after the traumatic occurrence. And the intent is to try and run those mini critiques after any call that has a traumatic outcome to it. And what we're seeing with the military is that these guys are doing this, after the firefight back at base camp, and it's helping them realize that they did everything they possibly could in some cases. It doesn't affix blame to anybody, but it helps them get a clearer picture of what just happened. And they're not living it in their mind, and then the mind altering potentially some of the outcomes or occurrences.
And you can make a choice. The choice can be, you can choose several choices, and you could choose sorrow, you could choose support. Once you get over the feeling bad, I've always told people that the right thing to do is to turn that negative energy, after you've done it, because it's normal and it's actually healthy to, we talk about the time, that sounds warm and fuzzy, but to cry or to feel bad about what happened, but then to turn that around into something positive. And some of the things that you're doing and we've done before is going back and learning from past events. Kind of like you're talking about, they're already doing it right after the event, but we don't even do that enough with things that have happened years ago, because we keep talking about history repeating itself. Is being able to get out and share that information as to what happened and be able to go revisit it without worrying about, like you said, affixing blame or worried about a lot. It's not a point of pointing fingers. It's a point of how can we keep this from, if we did do something we can control, that hope, if it's predictable, it's preventable, how can we keep it from happening again? And how do you do that? You
have to look at lessons learned and best practices and apply them to the situation you're faced with at the moment you're faced it. And the only way to do that is to learn from the past and to stay up on what's going on in our profession. What tools, tricks of the trade, what initiatives, technology, what's out there to help us do our job better. And you got to embrace it. This business is, the need to put out fires is going to be going on probably for the rest of mankind.
Yeah.
But it's going to be different in the future, and that's okay. And that's something that also we have a tough time dealing with. It's change,
Yeah.
That's tough for us in this business.
Biggest
We're all
problem
in
in the
our
fire service. Biggest problem in the fire service. The absolute change. Well, hey, and we've been visiting with Chief Ron Siarnicki, the Executive Director for the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. And Ron, I guess I wanted, because this is going to be another one I'm going to ask you to come back on, because we still have some time to go here with the show, but there's so much more I want to talk to you about too. But tell us a little bit about, this is going to be a hard one for you because there's so much. Just take a look at your website. The foundation, I mean, we were talking about counseling and having an impact on the firefighters and their families and dealing with that. But, the big hot topic, I guess, if I could just pick one thing out and please jump in there with anything else, is, the 16 initiatives and trying to, figure a way to keep firefighters from hurting themselves and alive, keep them alive and keep them from hurting themselves. where do you think? Do you see us making progress in certain areas? And you're out there. You're all over the country lecturing and visiting with folks and doing programs and that. Where do you see the impacts, Ron?
You know, we get asked that a lot because now we've been doing this for a little over 4 years, and people say, well, there's still 100-plus firefighters dying in our country. And I understand that, but what has to be looked at is how they're dying, and when you look at that criteria of how they're dying, Hometown Heroes kind of skewed it because it added heart attacks to the mix, and that's not bad. I'm just saying that, you know, if you just look at purely numbers, and I don't, because the way I'm gauging what's going on with the life safety initiatives is the impact we're seeing from people who have taken a class, been exposed to the initiatives, or taken a step to improve their health and wellness, and had a positive experience. We get letters and emails all the time from firefighters out there who say, I sat through the Courage to Be Safe training program and learned about all those 16 initiatives. And to be candid, I had issues with my cardiovascular system. But I loved the fire service so much, I wasn't telling anybody. And then when I heard the survivor speak and put my spouse's face into that video, it was enough to compel me. And the truth is, I went in, I had a procedure, and I'm still out here fighting fires. And so all that concern that I had was really for naught, and I jeopardized myself, but even more so my family, because I wasn't well informed about this process. And so you think about that, and you hear from departments where chiefs has taken a step to really deal with seatbelts. That's an easy one probably to pick on. But, you know, in the first couple of years of this program, we were averaging around 10 firefighter fatalities due to seatbelts in this country. But just think about that. We would not get in our car with our families, our personal car, and move that car 1 inch unless our kids and our spouses and ourselves were strapped in.
Ron, 4-year-old kids are saying, Daddy, put your seatbelt on.
Exactly.
Right? Our kids are telling us to put our seatbelts on.
Then we get in a 17-ton fire truck going sometimes at the speed of light through intersections, and we don't. And it's tragic because those occurrences are truly preventable. But I have to say, at least last year, the number of seatbelt fatalities is down.
Well,
I'm hoping it's related to the seatbelt pledge, and I'm hoping it's related to the initiatives. But I've also learned that it isn't just the foundation, it isn't just the seatbelt pledge. Everybody's working, and I'm hoping that it's that the consortium of everybody pushing this that's making a difference. And
Ron, you know I've said it before. You know, when I get done, you know, bragging on you and talking about the foundation and the impact you're having, and when we get to, you know, some of the initiatives, dealing just specifically with seatbelts, I tell people, here it is. Here it is. I'll make it real simple for you. If you don't want to be ejected out the windshield of your fire engine or out the side window, put your seatbelt on. And it's the same thing for the cancer. If you don't want to die of cancer from what you're breathing, then put your face piece on or put it back on. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you would think this is so simple, yet you just said it. How many people? We've talked. If you stop at red lights, and if you stop at stop signs, and if you have somebody backing you up, your chance of bad things happening, as Chief Brunasini would say, the chance of scaring everybody in the cab of the rig goes down to next to nothing. You know, what's wrong with stop? I mean, our guys, we have opticoms everywhere here, Ron. It doesn't give our guys the right to bust an intersection. They're a traffic control flow device. We still get there quick. We still get there fast. We still get there, you know, as quickly, as safely as we can. But simple things like that, to me, you know, how do you not support that as a leader? You know, I guess would be my question. How do you, as a fire chief, not support having your people wear their seatbelts? I don't know.
And there isn't a way not to do it. Unfortunately, though, there are people that are in fact not supporting it, and I understand that. Some of that is the local politics of the fire department and all those other pieces. But the reality is if you focus on the right thing, and that's what Everyone Goes Home is about, and that's why the affiliation with the foundation was created. It's about not you, the firefighter, because unfortunately we have all, and I'll be the first to admit, done stupid things in our career in the fire.
I got a list here that'll wear you out.
Right. The reality is, and I'll be honest, when I did some of those things, I wasn't thinking about my wife or my family. I was thinking about me. Boy, this is cool. This is why I got into this game. It's fun, and we hear that. That's human. But the reality is, the decisions we make as individuals, firefighters, and that our leaders make, both formal leaders and the informal leaders in those crews, impact all of our families.
Well, and you just let me interrupt. You just mentioned something that I touch on pretty much everywhere I go, Ron, and that is the informal leaders. Because I talk about when somebody says, Ron, what do you do for a living? Well, I'm, besides telling them I'm a rapid oxidation suppression technician, I use that in the fancy groups, you tell them I'm in the business of managing the consequences of other people's actions. That's what we're in the business of. But that also means our own. And you hit it. That is perfect, because that's what you need to look at your partner and go, put your face piece back, cover up, do this, slow down, don't do that, whatever. Put your seatbelt on. Like you said, it doesn't is there anywhere in there that's Ron? I guess the question is there anywhere has to be a lieutenant or a cabin chief that has to tell somebody to do that?
Not at all. Everybody. Everybody. It should be accountable, and everybody should be responsible for their own well-being and the well-being of their crew that they're a part of. And it doesn't matter whether you're wearing gold on your collar or silver or whatever. It's, I take care of you, you take care of me. And that's one of those lines, out of the old Backdraft movie. And I'm not even going to talk about the movie, but that's a line out of there that can be applied. You take care of me, I take care of you.
That's right.
And that's what this business should be about. We think about we're taking care of, and to use Chief Bernasini's quote, Mrs. Smith. Absolutely, we need to take care of Mrs. Smith and her family. But if we don't get there, or we die in the process of getting there, and not help Mrs. Smith, we have compounded the problem and not have done any good for anybody.
We failed her. We have failed her by not getting there.
And our families.
Yeah, exactly. And what's wrong, and I'll say this, what's wrong with being a little selfish and taking care of, if you're not willing to take care of number one and those around you, then you're going to be, you said it, you're not going to be any good to Mrs. Smith. You have to be willing to train and do whatever you can to be safe. And, one of the things, when I sign every one of my books, every single one of my books has Be Safe and has EGH, and Everyone Goes Home, every single one. But one of the small impacts that you had, buddy, and I saw this, I was down there teaching in Georgetown, Texas. They got a great fire department. They got a new chief they're loving down there, but what a great group of folks. The men and women there are awesome. Every one of their overhead doors, Ronnie, has Everyone Goes Home on it. Before you pull out, you have to look at that. And off to the right, they pose...
That's the perfect reminder, that subtle reminder,
and this is nothing but stickers. They put on the door that says Everyone Goes Home, and off to the right of their firehouses is a posting of the picture and the name and the date of the most recent firefighters that have lost their lives. And he says, we're not trying to make you feel bad. We're trying to make you, every time you go out the door, to sit there and go, okay, this is what it's all about. You said something about family. How hard is it? And you and I both run up against this, just to get your guys. Now here I'm blessed, but I was in another department, to get them to fill out the death or serious injury notification form. I'm not giving you that information. I'm not doing this or whatever. It's this, they're not thinking about their family. And I think if they had the opportunity to do what you do, to do what we do when we run a firefighter's funeral, to sit with the family. You'd be right. You'd be changed forever. You visit with one widow, and you'll be changed forever about how you take care of business in a firehouse. Right?
Absolutely, and that's what we try to do with using survivors to tell their stories, is the impact. And you talk about that notification. That is a critical piece, and also designating, who your beneficiaries are.
Oh my God, yes.
Fortunately, in our business, we sometimes change spouses and significant others as much as we change uniforms.
Right.
Just a part of the business, and that could be a whole other show topic we could talk about. But the issue is that once you're gone, no one can go back in time and read your mind as to who you wanted to get the benefits that are going to come, other than whatever piece of paper is in that file drawer, either at the fire station or at the city hall or the volunteer municipality. And if you've changed significant others a couple of times, it's going to go to what that piece of paper says. And that happened in Charleston, just cases that, are big name, and that was in the media a lot in Charleston. It happened after 9/11. It happens a lot in our country when there's a fatality. And then, unfortunately, it brings out some of those really tough moments that families are going through anyway, and then it brings a new dimension to that, because then you have, children from previous marriages and all those other issues. And unfortunately, PSOB is charged with trying to sort that out. And this is my opinion, but I think they do a good job at what they try to do. They're in a tough predicament trying to manage the program. And I do think they got good people down there, and they work very hard, but they often get a bum rap just because of the bureaucracy of a governmental entity. But in the long run, we can make it easier. And I recommend that, every department do this. We talk about it in our training programs. Every department has some kind of annual evaluation. Even volunteer departments do some kind of evaluation of their membership. Just add one piece of paper to that package when you do it every year. And that is, fill it out again. Yeah, you know what? It may be a little bit of work, but just fill in again who you want your designated benefits to go to. And just do it every year. And that way, you don't have to worry about that if something should happen to you. And that's some of the other stuff the foundation does. That's what you were talking about. I mean, we do all kind of different things with preparing departments to deal with line of duty deaths, making sure that firefighter benefits are supported. We have response teams to go out and help when a line of duty death occurs. We're doing training programs for chief officers on preparing the department, getting things in order. So there's a lot of other things. Plus, all the work we do directly with the families, helping them travel that journey of rebuilding their lives. And you're right, everything's on our website. We're excited. We just launched our new website last week. It's got a lot more stuff in there, a lot more information, and we hope easier to find.
Well, it is. It's incredible. And real quick, that website is if we go right back to it, is obviously the www.firehero.org.
Correct.
Firehero.org. Put that in your favorite places, folks, for our listeners. This should be one. I mean, I go to it often. I'm going to wait till the end to ask you how people can help support the organization and everything. But everything is on there that you need, and if not, it's linked. I mean, it's one of those websites behind Firefighter Close Calls, FireEngineering.com. It's one of those ones you need to visit. I've talked about before. Instead of put down the Dallas Morning News sports section and make 2 or 3 of these websites, like this one in particular, your morning newspaper. Pick it up and read. Everybody's got the computers now, right? You click on it, read something about it. Right? I mean, make it part of your life.
Absolutely, and all the things I talked about. There's a resource guide on there for dealing with line of duty deaths. There's notification forms. There's next of kin beneficiary forms. All that stuff is there. A couple clicks and hit print, and you got it. So we're not what we see part of our role is to build these toolboxes and to build these resources, provide them upon need for free when you're ready. So 24/7. If you need to, if you're surfing the net at 2:00 in the morning and a question comes up and you need something, go to our site, pull it down, load it. You got it. Have fun, enjoy. And that's what needs to happen. We need to make it easier for our brothers and sisters that are out there doing the job. And by making it easier with some of the administrative stuff and some of the things we're talking about, we'll give them then that little more time to do more training, to spend more time in the books, to spend more time learning about the profession we love so much, the business we're in, and hopefully it all links to making it safer. And I got to say this: we were talking earlier about the taking care of our family and understanding the difference between being a little bit sensitive of putting ourselves first. That's that doesn't mean we can't be still aggressive firefighters to get in there and do what we need to do, providing the situation calls for and allows us to do that.
Right.
That's part of that whole assessment of our surroundings and understanding risk and gain, or the lack of gain, and so not putting ourselves in a situation where we're risking everything and gaining nothing out of the process.
Well, nobody's asking you to stop being a firefighter. We just want you to go home to your family. I mean,
we hear that all the time. You know, that's one of the naysay issues is, oh well, you know, you got to the point now with all this safety stuff that, you know, we're all going to fight every fire from 2 blocks away, and we're not going to go in and get people out, and if they're hanging from the windows, we're not going to get there in time. Nobody's saying that, because that's the business we're in. We got to do those things. But what we want you to do is to go do that, and then walk out that building, and then at the end of the shift, the end of the day, the end of the visit to the fire station, you pack up your toys, you go home and you take care of your family, and you come back and you serve your community another day.
Yeah, and I say, to be honest, I'm going to say it for you, because I don't want to put you in a spot that way. That's just a lazy excuse to not make a difference in your firehouse. If you want to say that they're trying to take the fire, you know, I don't agree with, you know, if you pull up at my home at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 2 in the morning, I need you to go in and make sure my daughter's not in there. You pull up at the strip mall at 2 in the morning and there's no cars, then you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, please don't use not using safety or not being safe as an excuse to not be, you know what I'm saying? That's something that really just you know, and again, I don't want to put you on a spot and make you say something with being a director, but I can say it for both of us, I guess, is don't use that, don't be lazy. Don't use that as an excuse to not be safe at your job. Nobody's saying you can't be a firefighter. I tell people we're a very safe, aggressive fire department. We fight fires, we pull ceiling, we put holes in roofs, but we know when to go in, when not to go in, and when to come out.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, don't use that as a lazy excuse to not be safe. I mean,
exactly.
Right? You know, I mean, that's I don't know how you, and I'll just say it, I don't know how you do what you do without getting frustrated sometimes, really.
And there are days I do, but also, you know, the one thing you were saying about, you know, whether I say it or not, the reality is the one piece that helps me in what I'm doing with the foundation is, you know, I spent 25 years in Prince George's County, so I've been there.
A busy-ass place.
Yeah. You know, back then, we were doing about 110,000 calls for service a year. Granted, you know, 75% EMS. That's cool. That's part of our business.
Yeah.
Fire-based EMS is what we do. And you know what? It needs to be what we do, because that's helping Mrs. Smith. I've been on the end of a hose line. I've worked in an engine company, truck company, and I've heard all the excuses, and I've also heard all the little side games and all that stuff, because I've been there. But the reality is what we need to do now is say, okay, look, this is part of that culture that's out there. How do we change that? And it's going to take time to change a culture, to turn things around. We understand that as well. But the reality is, if we can get people to realize that by understanding what's happening, we're going to take away the one thing I hear all the time with most of these guys. I know what I'm doing. It isn't going to happen to me. Well, the reality is 100-plus guys every year say that, and it does happen to them. And I don't want somebody out there who's listening to us today, or somebody out there in the fire service, to be the next guy on the list. That's what I don't want to have happen.
Well, and Ron, we get people that tell us all the time, you and I, that you know, well, we haven't hit a fire in 6 months or 8 months, and how do you keep, you know what, I always say, for the further you are from your last fire, the closer you are to your next one. And God forbid, but it's not always FDIY, Chicago, L.A., you know, that Houston, Dallas. You know, read the names. Read the departments. It's happening everywhere. No one's immune. That's like when somebody says they try to differentiate between volunteer and paid firefighter. Fire doesn't care. It's an equal opportunity killer.
Absolutely.
It'll burn you to death. It'll kill you. You could crash your vehicle the same way. You can die of a heart attack the same way, no matter what you're wearing. You know, I mean, that, you know, so it affects everybody.
And, you know, I try to get it where guys and gals can relate to. And I talk about, you know, you talk about professional sports, and we are, to some extent. We're very much like professional athletes. They go out there and they have a great season, and they win their games. But they win a game. What do they do the next day? They're back out on the practice field. They're back out looking through the playbook. They're back out preparing for the next one. Why? Because when they go out there They want to make sure they're putting their A game on every time.
Right.
Not once, out of a season, not every other game. They practice every day so that they are giving their A game 100% of the time. And I often challenge fire departments. Do we do that? Do we give our A game? And if you talk to people and you can kind of get them on the side and get them to be honest with you, oftentimes they say no. And that's what we need to work on, is keeping ourselves at the best we can, at the best of our ability, and not everybody's abilities are the same. We understand that. That's the way people are, but we got to give our A game every day. Because
you've got to that's a training thing. If you're not training every day, if you're not finding ways to, you're failing yourself. You're preparing to fail if you're not training every day, if you're not reading something every day, if you're not, I think the nice thing is, Ron, I think it's more of than not of firefighters that truly do try to read something every day or learn something. There's a handful we need to go after and kind of bop them on the nose and say, look, this is what it's all about. You want to claim to be a brother or a sister. It's more than that sticker on your car or on your license plate. It's a 24/7 commitment, and it's not just about crawling down a hallway with each other. It's about taking care of business, taking care of your own, right?
Absolutely. And it's about making sure that we don't get complacent.
Oh, yeah.
That often happens. I hear people say, I got in, I raised my hand, I took the oath, I got hired, I joined the volunteer company, whatever. I'm done. I'm going to sit on the couch and wait for the big one. Well, guess what? That ain't the way it's supposed to be.
No, you read the wrong brochure.
Yeah, exactly.
You read the wrong brochure if you thought that's what it's supposed to be. Hey, we're going to close this out a little bit here, but I wanted to pick your brain for a little bit here, and I try to do this with most of the guests, Ron, for our listeners. What advice? Because, and again, like I said, I love the people I run with for a lot of reasons, because they love the fire service so much you can't help but admire them. But like I said before, they're modest, and you're all over the place, doing programs and helping folks and marketing your mission, our mission actually is what it is. What advice would Chief Siarnicki, with all your, now again, all the years you spent with, how many years, when did you start in the fire service? What year? I know it was 78.
I started as a volunteer in 1974.
Okay, 74. So you've been around.
Don't go that far. Don't go there.
Well, no, what I've said is there's a lot of young firefighters that I interviewed today that weren't alive when we were starting in the business, and that's normal.
That's funny, because I'm now back a volunteer now, and where I live, it's an all-volunteer community.
Doesn't that feel good?
It does, and I try to help. And granted, I'm not saying I'm making the rig every time it goes, but I'm going to try to help. And we do a bunch of stuff. We run a cadet program for young kids, and we do a whole bunch of stuff. But some of these kids come in and they give you your birth date. That's where I'm going. I'm like, man, I was already on a truck company then, or I was already a captain then, and these kids are just being born.
Well, and
sorry, I digressed. I'm sorry.
No, but you know what? You led perfectly into where I was going with this, and I wanted to ask you a question. We do this with a lot of our guests. Is what advice you're sitting in that firehouse, and there's 4 new or brand new firefighters, volunteer, paid, doesn't matter. You walk into a firehouse, they say, Chief, we want you to meet. This is our rookie class of this year. They're getting ready to graduate and get on the line. What advice would you give to that new firefighter to keep healthy? Well, if they said, Chief, would you spend 5 minutes with these young folks, these young men and women? What advice would you give them about their career, about their life, or whatever, about what they're about to get into? What advice would Chief Siarnicki give them?
Actually, it's pretty simple, and I do it a lot. After the intros and all that, I say, I just want you to think about one thing. What's going to be your legacy when you leave this business? What are people going to remember about you, firefighter Joe Smith or firefighter Mary Adams or whatever? What are they going to remember, and then what do you want them to remember you for? Was it somebody who was a good firefighter, who trained, who drilled, who learned something new every day? Or was it somebody that ended up as a couch potato and didn't do anything and didn't perform and didn't provide to the team? And that happens in our business. And you have the opportunity as new recruits to put in motion your legacy. whether you decide to stay as a rank-and-file firefighter your entire career, which is great, and do other things, and stuff, that's cool. Or you decide to be a chief, but then that legacy is going to have an impact on the people around you.
Well,
how does that relate?
Today's a perfect example, and I said it to some media folks right before we started doing the show. It's September 11th today, and you chose this day for the show, which I can't thank you enough for, first of all, being here, because I know this is a busy day for you as well. But it's the 11th, September 9/11. But Annie Fredericks and our friends that we lost are still alive. They're still teaching us. They're still teaching. When you said legacy, my firefighters are still being taught by Annie Fredericks, and he's been gone since 2001.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. What your legacy? What are they going to be saying about you? Unless you really don't care, which I think most do. What do you want God, that's perfect. What do you want them to say about you when you move on, when you retire, when you leave? It's one thing to be said, man, what a great firefighter. So I think said he or she was crazy. I mean, like you said, we did things younger in our career that we're kind of embarrassed about, and you don't want people doing that same stuff. What do you want them? I guess my thing would be I want folks to say, you know what, he was always looking out for me, or she was always looking out for me, and that's why through the training. I think I told you my stance has changed, and I know you'll love this one because it's the way you are. I used to tell people it's my job to make sure you go home at the end of your shift or at the end of your call with a volley joint, and you'll never hear me say that again. Rick Lasky will not say that. What I say now is it's my job to make sure you go home at the end of your career. When you retire as a volunteer firefighter, as a paid firefighter, to go home with 2 good knees, a good back, without cancer, so you can enjoy life. I think that's what the foundation's doing, what you've been doing, and your folks and the people supporting you and your group and your efforts, is you're in the long run. This is not the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation is not a quick fix, short term. I try to say at the beginning of the show, you're in it for the long haul. And you talk about legacies and what people are doing. That's why I said we're going to be talking about you and this organization for a long time. I think we need to take that attitude in the fire service even further, where let's not just worry about going home at the end of the call of shift. That's part of it. That should be just part of the big picture of let's go home at the end when we're all done.
Absolutely. And for me, if someone were to ask me what I'm hoping the legacy is going to be, and it's just something that I learned at a very young age and kind of through my family. Just my parents were both involved with the fire service from my earliest days of recollection, and I came up with the beliefs that if I find something, I need to leave it better than how I found it.
Yeah, that's a little bit better for the next guy.
Yeah, and then hopefully they will then do the same. And, the legacy is whether you do that or you leave it in worse shape. And that's what people remember.
Exactly. And we know what? In some cases, unfortunately, we have left it in worse shape where we've created some things that have taken hard work to correct, but through some good folks, we'll be able to fix some things in the fire service. Buddy, I think you are. In fact, I know for a fact you're having an impact. You're saving lives. You're keeping people healthy. You're bringing them back home to their families. There's men and women that are alive today because of what the foundation is doing. I know when you were here, and I'm going to tell the listeners, I know he's busy. He's a busy guy. He's all over the place. If you ever have the opportunity to bring this man out to do a keynote, to do a lecture, to do a program, I don't care if he takes 5 minutes and talks to before your seminar starts. You need to get a hold of Chief Siarnicki and see if you can get him on on his calendar, because he will impact your firefighters forever. Ron, you did it for my folks here. We had 16 states and Canada represented, keeping tradition alive, and people are still talking about your talk and Chief Halton's talk. You're impacting folks. Before we close out, if somebody wanted, and I can go right to the website, but if they want to support the foundation. And I'm telling you, there's a lot of people out there with great causes. But this is one you need to be behind. If you're truly one of us, and I'll say it out loud, if you're truly a firefighter, this is a foundation you need to support. What can they do to support you?
Well, one of the things that people don't really know is that the foundation really has to raise all its own funds to survive. Even though we were created by Congress, they in the public law that created us, they said that they weren't going to fund us. We won't get into those politics.
There you go.
That could be another show today, too. But the reality is that, we need help with resources, and people can go online and make a donation, go to our store online and buy some products, so there's a return on investment for those people that need to do that. Come to one of our golf events, we're doing, some stuff with NASCAR these days, enter the sweepstakes for the Harley-Davidson motorcycle that Pierce is putting out for us. There's a variety of things to do. What I tell people is to become an educated consumer. Learn all about us, and then look at what you can personally do, whether it's monetary or volunteer some time or an in-kind support or something. But get involved.
Well, even if you just go to make a donation part on your site, but I've said to people before, Ron, I know there's departments there doing fundraisers. I've been there before to do a class, and they do a 50-50, whatever, and they're donating the money to the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. Could you imagine if you got every firefighter? I'll just say this as simple: every firefighter sent $1 in a year.
Yeah.
Think of that. If every firefighter, what are we up to now? 1.2 or? Yeah. If half of them sent $1, I'm talking $1 a year to the foundation. Obviously, you could do more than that. I'm just saying. This is one of those groups. If you're going to sit there and choose and look and go, I can't donate to everybody. To me, it's how am I going to impact the most people and really be true to my goal in life, and that is to be any way I can a supporter of everyone going home. Then it's that. It's this organization, it's that program. Hey, if somebody wanted to contact you, I know they've got contact us on the website.
Right.
Do we go to our staff? What would be the email address if they want to get a hold of Chief Siarnicki?
It's rsarnicki@firehero.org. Real easy.
Okay.
rsarnicki@firehero.org. No dots, no dashes. Pretty simple.
And it's, you can go right to the website, folks. It's an easy one to get to. It's one you need to spend some time on. Please do what you can to support this organization. The challenge should be to get as many. The nice thing, Ron, is I can go places and ask people about certain programs or ideas, and they have no idea what I'm talking about. You're hard-pressed, and this means the word's getting out, you're hard-pressed to go out there and find someone that doesn't know the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. Doesn't mean we don't need to support them. By all means, we need to support them, but people know, they know about it, and we need to step it up and do what we can to support the organization. Buddy, you know this, I've said this before, I am there for you. You're my brother. I love you, pal. I've said this openly. I've said this, anything I can do, and whenever I talk about you and your program in one of the Pride and Ownership classes, I always mention how much I love you and admire you and what you're doing. I'm there for you always, pal. You know that. Anything I can do to help or do whatever I can, hell, you're doing so much for the rest of us. It's the least I can do to just promote what the organization does, because it's affecting all our families. It really is.
It does, and I appreciate that. And what we need is people like you to help us as they step up to the plate, because that's how we're going to get out there more and have more people understand what we're about. And really, those resources that you were talking about that we raise, they're going to the families. We don't have overhead. We're not driving big company cars or any of that other stuff. That's not what we're about. Our money goes to the families.
It goes to the family support. That's what we're all about. And we can say things the way we want sometimes, and somewhere this has been one of my little mottos lately. But maybe enough with being politically correct, enough with being warm and fuzzy. Let's just stand up and say enough with it all. Let's get serious. Let's just plain flat out get serious about taking care of each other and our families. And if you believe in that, you'll be part of what's going on with because this is not just an organization out there trying to push their own agenda or whatever. This is an organization that's there for all of us. And if there's a listener out there that doesn't understand that, give me a call. You can call me here at the office, 972-219-3563, and I'll be happy to explain to you the reality of what the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation is doing and why they're there. So,
and what I would do is invite anyone who's listening that would want to. If you want to really know more about, in a couple of weeks, the National Memorial will occur October 3rd, 4th, and 5th in Emmitsburg, Maryland. Come on and see what it's like, because we're going to have 1,000 survivors of fallen firefighters who died in the line of duty last year in one place at one time. That's
you want to see the impact. Well, first of all, if you want to see something that will impact your life forever, go just one time.
Absolutely.
Go just one time, and you will be impacted forever.
Phenomenal experience that weekend, and it's really the start for those families in their journey. But they're going to need our help. They're going to need our support, and we're going to be there for as long as they need it, because that's the right thing to do.
Well, Brother Ron, we've been visiting with Chief Ron Siarnicki, the Executive Director of the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, and brother, I can't thank you enough. Folks, reach out to him, reach out to the organization, support him. But I think Ron will be the first one to tell you, all that aside, do whatever you can to take care of each other for real. Don't just talk the game. Go out there and make a difference in the lives of the men and women that you work with, your volunteer fire department, your accommodation joint, your paid joint. Keep the families, that's got to be, have that picture. Do what Georgetown did. Put on the inside of your bay doors, everyone goes home. Look at each other and just give each other that nod, or come up with a hand signal where you bump fists or whatever, and you say, every time, that's the reminder. Something that's, right? Something that's going to jar your memory that we need to be doing everything so we can go home together.
Absolutely.
Well, buddy, hey, Ron, thank you so much, pal. I can't thank you again enough. I want to get you back on because there's a couple more things I want to talk to you about one day, if you'll honor us and do that for us.
Absolutely, and I just appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you guys.
Brother, and especially on September 11th, I love you, pal. You're one of my good buddies, and thanks for all you do, buddy.
Thanks, Chief. I appreciate it.
All righty. We've been visiting again with Chief Ron Siarnicki, the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. Please give him a shout if you need anything. Go to that website. Do what you can for each other. And I know Brother Ron would agree with this. We always end this show with two very important words and simple ones, and I think fairly easy to follow, and that's be safe.